So it's almost August already, which means we're past the halfway point of 21, and I have no idea what happened. But it also means Netflix is adding a ton of great stuff in August, so let's talk about that. If you're new here, welcome, but what we do in these videos is we go through all the most interesting stuff Netflix is adding in a given month, and we're going to start off with all the familiar favorites they're adding on the 1st, and then we will work our way through the month in chronological order, stopping to talk about the most interesting projects coming to Netflix this month. And this month does include quite a few Netflix originals, a bunch of movies, a handful of new shows, some true crime docs, all kinds of cool stuff. The full list of everything I talk about is in the top pinned comment. And on the subject of subscribers, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, I would invite you to click the subscribe button, maybe even click that little bell icon. That way you get notified when videos like this come out so you never run out of good movies and shows to watch. But we'll kick off this episode with my top 10 movies that they're adding on the 1st. Keep in mind, these are all going to be familiar favorites that you've likely seen before. My number 10 pick is Seabiscuit. While I do think this is a fantastic movie with a great soundtrack, great acting, great cinematography, it is a little bit Oscar baity, it feels a little bit forced, and to me that just holds it back from being a little grander, but still an excellent film. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, my number 9 pick is Deep Blue Sea, a somewhat misunderstood movie. I realize it's a dumb movie about sharks, but it's also kind of a fun midnight monster movie. It does feature some cool practical effects and a couple of really fun scenes that have held up over time, even if the graphics have not. The Losers is one of the more underrated movies getting added, but I will say with the incredible cast that this movie has, featuring people like Idris Elba, Chris Evans, Zoe Saldana, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Jason Patric, you would expect more from a movie like this. It's a little bit basic, it's a little bit by the book, and they did play it a little bit too safe for a kind of wild, zany movie, but if you're in the mood for sort of a colorful action movie, this one definitely fits that bill. Beowulf, the Robert Zemeckis version that is all computer generated, gets added back. It was on last year. I do like this movie. Beowulf obviously being an incredibly classic story, and these movies that are all done in CGI tend to not work really well for me, but even though this one is about 10 years old, I think it's one of the better ones, mainly because you've got such great performances from people like Ray Winston, Angelina Jolie, Crispin Glover, and Anthony Hopkins. And it is a beautiful animation style, even though it is starting to look dated. It does a good job of bringing this really epic, wild story to life. I'm still holding out though for something like a Peter Jackson version of Beowulf, but that is yet to be seen. I happen to think that Lincoln Lawyer is an excellent courtroom drama. It's part courtroom drama, part investigation movie starring Matthew McConaughey. He plays a fantastic character as usual, but I particularly like his character in this movie more so than a lot of others. It does feature a case that involves sexual assault, so there is some intense elements, but nothing overtly done on screen that's too bad, but it is fairly accessible and pretty broadly appreciated.
Bueller? Bueller? Bueller?
Ferris Bueller comes in on my top 10 at number 5 because let's face it, who doesn't like Ferris Bueller?
Oh, well, he's very popular, Ed. The sportos, the motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
I recently gushed at length about how much I like Boogie Nights, which is also included with Netflix. Now they're adding Magnolia. This is what Paul Thomas Anderson followed up Boogie Nights with. The studio allowed him director's cut. They said they would produce whatever he wanted to make. This is what he made. And it is bold, to say the least, for a lot of reasons. One, it's incredibly long. It meanders. It's very hard to follow. And then you've got Tom Cruise, one of the biggest stars in the world, talking about pee-pees and wee-wees. So it's a bold movie, but I do like it. This is more for the art film crowd. If you get a little ways into this one and you find it's not quite resonating with you, it's going to continue in the same tone throughout, more or less. My number 3 pick goes down a little bit easier. It's Pineapple Express. I consider it to be one of the funniest movies made this century. Right now, we're currently in a pretty terrible drought in terms of comedy movies. It's been a long time since we've had a handful of really good ones to come out, but Pineapple Express is from a batch of pretty damn good comedy movies, if you ask me, including movies like Superbad. also available on Netflix right now. Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can is a favorite of mine because it's so different from everything else that he did. While he has done fun movies, I find Catch Me If You Can to have a better spirit and sort of a fun nature about it almost throughout the entire thing. Obviously there are serious moments, but it's just got this life and this levity to it that you don't typically get with Spielberg movies, at least not throughout the way you do with Catch Me If You Can. It's just an excellent and fun watch. And then DiCaprio makes my number one pick as well with Inception, and it just happens to be Mrs. Van Dam's favorite movie. Now let's move on to some family favorites, some shows, and then we'll talk about everything they're adding after the 1st of August. Beethoven and Beethoven Second get added for some zany 90s family fun. I remember enjoying these when I was a kid. If you did, there's a very good chance you've got kids that are now old enough to watch these. If that's not enough zany 90s family fun, they're also adding Major Payne with Damon Wayans, another just fun family movie, probably not appropriate for very young kids, but still kind of a fun family comedy. And then one that is PG-13 but is still fairly friendly is Space Cowboys, which was directed by Clint Eastwood but also stars Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland. But it's about a group of octogenarians who go back out into outer space to fix a satellite. It is a fun movie, but it will feature some mild profanity. As far as shows they're adding on the 1st, they're adding seasons 1 through 7 of 30 Rock, so if you didn't get enough of that show back in the day, you can binge watch it all again. I'm sure some people will. And then the same goes for Friday Night Lights, an intensely popular show, but I would imagine you're either rewatching it or not watching it the first go round this far after it had been out. But if you do, or maybe there's another old show that you want to watch that's not available on any streaming services, there is a good chance you can still access it using today's sponsor, CyberGhost VPN. This is a VPN service that keeps your web browsing safe, secure, private, helps prevent against identity theft, keeps, believe it or not, the NSA from looking at all your stuff, which they still do in the US, even though we busted them a long time ago with that. But CyberGhost also has specialized servers that allow you to watch Netflix and other streaming services in a variety of countries, and each country has a different selection, so odds are there's going to be some shows and definitely some movies that you cannot watch in whatever country you're in without this neat little app. And this neat little app costs as low as $2.19 to my viewers when you use the link in the description below. CyberGhost is super easy to use, and they have a 45-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. And if you need a little help, they've got great 24/7 customer support because you may need help getting it set up on one of the many devices you can use it on. Speaking of devices, you can use it on up to 7 at the same time, and it's all the different types of devices you're already using to stream movies and shows in your home. It's a fantastic deal. Again, go to the link in the description below. Pay as low as $2.19 to unlock way more movies and shows than you could ever possibly hope to watch. Speaking of movies and shows though, let's move on with the rest of everything getting added to Netflix in August. On the 3rd, they add a new Netflix doc called Pray Away, which is about the practice of some churches to try to pray the gay away. Maybe you've heard that phrase, but a lot of people are not necessarily aware of how shocking some of the methods were, and by shocking I literally mean they were electrocuting people trying to turn them straight. I guess they either didn't see or didn't understand the meaning in A Clockwork Orange, because negative reinforcement therapy like that doesn't really go well. They're also adding top secret UFO projects, Declassified. It's an unnecessarily long name, and it does appear to feature some footage and details on the most recent disclosures from the Pentagon. However, a preview of this thing looks like it's a bunch of old sort of gobbledygook information paired with that just to try to capitalize on the moment. Doesn't look like it's going to really be declassifying or giving you any information you haven't already got from the mainstream news so far. But they're hoping that you think it will so that you'll click it and watch it. August 4th brings Cocaine Cowboys, The Kings of Miami Season 1, which means they likely intend to make multiple seasons of Cocaine Cowboys, but another true crime Netflix documentary. I say it every month, they do a great job with these. There's no reason why this one's not going to be a fun watch. On the 6th, they add The Swarm, which is not to be confused with the 1978 movie. This is a new release movie from France, and it is going to be French language. It may have dubbing, but it's about a woman who begins to develop a taste for blood while caring for this swarm of locusts. The trailer actually looks really sick and interesting. I'm excited to see it. If it is dubbed well, it'll reach an even bigger audience, but odds are, if it's good, it will work its way onto one of my other video lists. Vivo is a new animated musical thing that doesn't look particularly remarkable, but Hamilton's Lin-Manuel Miranda is behind it, and that means there's likely some other really talented people involved in the production as well. So this one is potentially somewhat special, and at the very least, the music will probably be way better than it is in some of the other Netflix original animated movies.
Out there is a very, very bad man.
Where can we find this guy?
Okay, go. I know. Hold on. What are you doing at 3 points? Just you in.
Paper Tigers is a martial arts comedy that came out over the last year that has decent reviews, and the trailer looks really funny, so I'm excited to finally see it. It'll be getting added to Netflix on the 7th. And then on the 11th, they add The Kissing Booth 3, which this is an incredibly popular movie series coming out of Netflix. While I haven't watched it, from what I understand, it does not sound like it was intended to do very well at all, but like I said, wildly popular, and apparently this third one is the conclusion, but odds are they'll just keep making stuff until they burn it out like they do with everything. Now, August 13th brings some interesting picks, the first being Beckett. This stars John David Washington in what looks like it could be an incredible thriller. Now, originally this was being billed as a horror movie, or at least it was making its way up into some horror forums, things like that, but the full trailer really does make this look like it's just a tight, tense international thriller. However, there could be some sort of supernatural element that works its way in there, or that could have just been early misinformation. But if there's not a supernatural element, you can get your fix with brand new cherry flavor. This is actually a limited series from Netflix, so it's just going to be the one season, but it looks really interesting. This is about a filmmaker in LA in the early 90s on this sort of psychedelic looking journey. It's wild looking stuff. I think it's cool that it's a series. It is based on a book, and when they do limited series like this based on books, they tend to get more of the meat and potatoes out of the book onto the screen. At the very least, it's an interesting sounding project, which is why I included it in the thumbnail this month. On the 16th, they add Walk of Shame, which is a comedy starring Elizabeth Banks. It is funny. This is a fun movie, and I do recommend it, especially if you typically like sort of romantic comedy, lighter stuff. If you don't, though, at the very least, you could put this movie on in the background just for the occasional glimpse of Elizabeth Banks in that tiny yellow dress.
I am, just trying to get to work.
Why don't you get your pimp to drive you? These people are good people.
The 18th adds Memories of a Murderer, the Nilsson tapes. This is about serial killer Dennis Nilsson, and while it's not a series, this is a movie that runs about 90 minutes. It is playing audio tapes from this serial killer as he recounts some of the horrific things that he's done. Should be pretty intense, but is likely in line with like the Ted Bundy tapes, things like that. On the 20th, they add the Loud House movie, which is a Nickelodeon series. If you have kids that love that show, there's going to be a Netflix original movie coming on the 20th. And then they add Sweet Girl, a action movie starring Jason Momoa, but as always, whenever they have a big bankable star, somebody that makes money in the big box office blockbuster movies, and they release it right on Netflix, especially with no announcements prior to production, no big lead up or anything like that, it tends to mean the studios just didn't want to put marketing dollars into it because it's not that good. Odds are that's the case with Sweet Girl, but as always on this channel, I'll be watching it, and if it is good, it'll make it onto one of my other lists. And if it's not, it won't. August 23rd brings The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf. Now, this is an animated feature film that is definitely for anime fans, but might also be for fans of the live-action series of The Witcher, which will be returning to Netflix. COVID held up that production along with just about every other single production on the globe, but if you need your Witcher fix, this could be a good way to get it in while we're still waiting for that second season to drop later this year. The 25th adds a new series called Clickbait, and as someone who dabbles in clickbait professionally, I'm certainly gonna have to watch it. My prediction early on, though, is that this is gonna feel influenced by Black Mirror without being nearly as good as Black Mirror, but hopefully it's at least clever enough to keep you interested over multiple episodes, because if it is, it could pan out to be a decent anthology series. They're also adding Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed. Another sort of 90-minute documentary feature about legendary TV painter Bob Ross and what was apparently a pretty gruesome battle over his estate. Not quite sure what the details are, but for them to have made a feature about it and for me to have loved watching Bob Ross growing up, I'm gonna have to check it out. In 2014, Pierce Brosnan returned to the spy genre with The November Man, which is a pretty decent spy action movie. It's not fantastic, which is why most of you haven't heard of it before, but for one you have not heard of before, this one is pretty decent, could make a good watch there towards the end of the month. As promised, here is everything leaving in the month of August. If you're new here again, please note, the date shown is the date that it is gone, so you will need to watch it prior to that date. If you're going to set calendar reminders, make sure to do it before the date shown. If you need more time, go ahead and pause the screen, but let's also thank the Patreon supporters. They have been a great source of support through this pandemic. Advertising money had been cut majorly, which means YouTubers like me made a lot less money during this pandemic, and support certainly helped me get through it. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the video description. There's also a link down there where you can become a channel member right here on YouTube and get access to exclusive videos. But I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this episode, and you will see me on the next one.